permissions? Let me know and then we'll get started based on that. Hi, Faisal. Everybody have record permissions? Somebody doesn't, let me know. All right, let me bring up the schedule outline. I think this is the only page that's left. Everything else we had done the last time around. Remember, we finished the firewall. We had one section of the firewall left. That was the remote access VPN. We finished that last time around, the SSL and IP2. We've done content filtering. We did the WSA and the ESA last week. Basic wireless LAN configuration, we need to do that today, as well as ICE. We'll get started with that. And then router switch security we've done already. Good? Everybody okay with that? Same page? All right, so what are the different things that we'll be taking a look at on this weekend? We'll probably try to knock out the course this week, as I talked about the last time around. My objective first to get you started with how wireless works. This is basic wireless without using the ICE device in it. So basic wireless, you need to understand how that works so we can integrate that with ICE. So once I'm done with that, the latter part of the class, I'm going to be taking a look at your wireless ICE, except for the SXP. SXP we'll do tomorrow. So the objectives today is to knock out configuring the base network, configuration of the WLC, how that works. But before we do that, we'll talk about how the actual system works. Then we'll take a look at the wireless network integration with ICE. That's this part. .1x authentication with the VLAN assignment. Those are the things that we'll be taking a look at today and knocking them out. So tomorrow we'll be left with wired ICE, which is not going to be that big of a deal. We'll take a look at SXP, how the SXP involves the ICE, WLC, and the firewall to implement SGTs. I'll explain that. And last but not the least, we'll take a look at device administration. What is this? The job that ACS used to do allows you the ability to put in commands an administrator can execute on a particular router. This is the functionality that did not exist in the older versions of ICE. This is because of the introduction of TACAX Plus in ICE 2.x. So we'll take a look at that tomorrow. So if you want to take a look at it from tomorrow's perspective, so I'll put a highlighter against the bullets that we're going to be doing today. Red for today. All right. Configuration of the base network that includes the switches and DHCP. But more than that is the overview of how the wireless section works. We'll take a look at the WLC configuration from scratch, configuring VLAN interfaces, configuring WLANs. Once that's done, we'll take a look at wireless ICE, both the configuration of the relationship between WLC and ICE. What is ICE all about? We'll also give you an introduction to that. And then .1x authentication. So anytime a device logs in, rather than using the WEP, the web security mechanism, use .1x. That will also sign and put the person in the appropriate VLAN. I'll show you that. That's the objective for today. So the entire basic configuration over here, plus this part. Tomorrow, we'll be taking a look at wired ICE. How do you integrate ICE with the switches? identity user groups and users. We'll also get a chance to take a look at that today over here as well. So this part, I would say it is the same for both. So we will get a chance to do this part, creating the usernames and passwords and groups. We'll do that today as well. So once that's done, this is specifically for the wired, MAB for IP phones and the PC behind IP phones. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll do the SXP protocol tomorrow. That's integration of ICE, wireless, and firewall together. And last but not the least, we'll take a look at the device administration. So the blue part tomorrow, the red part today. That's the plan for today and for tomorrow. So what I'll do over here is I'll copy some part of it over here and put it into Notepad so we know exactly what we're doing for today at least. So copy this. So this part we are doing today. Identity management with ICE, we'll say for wireless, is going to be today. So in that, we won't do this. Configuring the relationship, we won't do that. Configuring identity groups and users, that is required. That will also help us tomorrow. We don't need to do that tomorrow because we will understand how that works. Just indent it a little better. Wireless ICE, we'll take a look at relationship between the WLC and ICE. What is the WLC? You'll take a look at that. Configuring DocumentX authentication with VLAN assignment, that is all today. This is the part we're knocking out today. Any questions, guys? Everybody okay with this? Let me save this, save as, annual package, security. Should be day 15 today. And today is the 14th. Good, everybody. All right. Give me like 2 minutes. I'll get a cup of tea and we'll get started. Anybody need record permissions before I get started over here? No, there's some other people that have joined in. Ibrahim, you logged in twice. Gilbert, I gave you the permission. Who else is joined in? Yeah, that should be it because Ibrahim, you joined in twice. All right. 2 minutes, you'll get started, all right? The good thing is what I've done for you guys is the base network. We've done that already. I'll just explain that as soon as I come back. Layer 3 diagram. Physically, everything is connected to what? A switch. So your WLC is connected to a switch. This port, because it will be allowing users to connect into, let's say, VLAN 20 or 30, WLC port itself connected to the switch is a trunk. You have an AP. AP will only communicate to whom? AP's job is just to communicate to whom? The WLC. So it's an access port. It can be in any VLAN as long as the AP can communicate to the WLC. So in my case, I put both of them in VLAN 123, but it's an access port. This is a trunk port. And then I have router 1 over here with F00 and F01. I have router 2 over here with 2 ports, F00 and F01. Now what happens is, now these are my sales servers. They're connected to some ports over here on the switch. Let's put port numbers over here so we can assign them. Let's say this is port 1, port 2, port 3, 4, 5, 6 on the switch. What I'm going to do over here is to make this topology, I'm going to say R1F01 and the forget about the ICE, and WLC should be in VLAN 123, AP should be in 123. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say R1F01, which is this port over here, AP, and this is a trunk, will be able to communicate to each other in the same VLAN. At the same time, R1 and R2 F00s are connected in VLAN 10. So I'm going to use a different color, let's say green. R1 F00 and R2 F00, both of them are in VLAN 10. That's the red one. And then the servers and R2 F01 are in a third VLAN. So this is this guy over here. This guy, and this guy are in a different VLAN, VLAN 20. So when this PC comes in, this wireless PC comes in, which actually wants to be in what VLAN? VLAN 20, because he's a sales guy. He logs into the sales SSID. On the WLC, I've mapped over the sales SSID to VLAN 20. When the packet goes to the AP will take the packet as is and forward the packet, tunnel packet towards whom? The WLC. WLC gets it, strips the header where AP is the source and WLC is the destination, takes the header off and sees that the guy is connected to sales. Oh, sales is in VLAN 20. So the packet hits WLC coming in from this port to that port from VLAN 123, strips that packet off. When it sends the packet back over here, the packet is going to go back down with the VLAN tag of 20. So the packet over here will go in to VLAN 20 as if he's sitting over here. You understand that? So that's how wireless works. So you need to make sure you have the physical and the logical right next to each other for you to understand that. So the WLC, this port over here, because it's going to carry traffic coming in from the AP over here, which is VLAN 123. It's going to have the traffic coming in from the sales guys. Sales guys are VLAN 20. That will come in from the AP using 123 on the outside. Once the WLC receives it, it's going to retag it with 20 and send it back on the same interface. What type of interface allows you to have multiple VLANs on the same port? What type of port allows multiple VLANs? Trunk port. So generally speaking, the WLC port over here is going to be a trunk port. Make sense? The new VLAN is not inserted, retagged. See, what happens is when the packet came in, the first initial packet, sorry. The first packet came in, that is from sales. It has a source MAC, destination MAC. It's got a normal IP packet, source IP, destination IP, wherever the actual PC wants to go. This packet would have been sent to the AP. What does the AP do with it? The PC gets an IP in VLAN 20. That is correct. Why? When it sends a DHCP broadcast again, because he's associated with sales VLAN, the packet will go out using the tag of VLAN 20. So it'll get an IP address in VLAN 20. So when this packet goes to the AP, because it gets tunneled, this is what I was trying to explain to you. Source IP will be the AP IP, destination IP will be the WLC IP. But in there, there'll be other information that he's a member of the sales VLAN. So when this packet goes from here to here, it's an access port over here, but it enters over here into VLAN 123. So at that time, the switch will put a tag on it, a VLAN tag on it, 123, sends it across over here, over the trunk to him. He gets it from 123. That will be the management VLAN for the WLC, receives it, strips this off because this is my header, says, oh, this is meant for the sales VLAN. So now at this point, it will create a new tag based on the sales being part of VLAN 20, puts a tag back in, sends a packet back on the same interface, but with a different VLAN tag. So when it goes back on the same interface with the VLAN tag of 20, that means it is over here. Is the traffic from PC always flow towards the WLC? By default, that is correct, Rinchen. There is a mode which is beyond the scope of this class. It's called the Flex Connect. Which allows you the ability on the AP to specify, get the configurations from the WLC, but have direct access from the AP into the switch environment. But that's using Flex Connect. We're not doing that over here. So in the basic setup, all the traffic will go through the WLC. Make sense, Rinchen? Does the AP change the source IP of the return traffic? No, it's going from here to here. But in terms of the switch, the MAC address would have been learned for this sales guy, would have been learned from this trunk port. So based on layer 2, it's going to send the packet to the WLC. WLC receives a packet, sends it across. I just answered that, Rinchen. Based on the VLAN tag, the MAC address for the PC, the MAC address for the wireless AP, a wireless PC, would have been learned on the switch from what port? This trunk port. So the return traffic is coming to this port. When he receives a packet for that source MAC address, WLC knows that this MAC address is associated with this particular AP, forwards the traffic over here. The AP gets the traffic, forwards it to the sales. So this is the Wi-Fi network over here. Clear, guys? Everybody okay with this? Now for this, you need to have your switching diagram with you. Otherwise, you would not be able, just by looking at this is not good enough. So what I'll do is I'll open my rack topology. This is my physical rack topology, where I have my WLC on port 15. My AP is on what? 16. All right. The other ones will come to later, but these are the two ports that are important to me right now, 15 and 16. Tell me, based on the diagram that I showed you, my layer 3 diagram, what should I do with the switch ports over here? What should I do with the WLC port in terms of configuring the switch port connecting to the WLC and the AP? So the WLC should be what? Trunk Rinchen. So this guy over here, Rinchen saying it should be trunked. And by the way, the WLC only supports one type of trunking, which is .1Q. The standard one. It does not support ISL. So you don't have a choice. You need to make sure it is .1Q. How about this port, port 16? The AP is only communicating to whom? It's not communicating to the rest of the devices. It's communicating to the WLC only. So AP to WLC, generally it's recommended to put it in the same VLAN. If it's not in the same VLAN, then it needs to go through a router to reach the WLC. As long as routing is there, that's also possible. But for performance sake, it is better to put them in the same VLAN. That's why what have I done over here? I put the AP and the WLC in the same VLAN. What VLAN is that? VLAN 123. So there's a trunk. When I configure the WLC, I'm going to say my management VLAN, the one that I'm going to use to communicate to my APs, is 123 with the tag of 123. All right. This is my AP VLAN. All right. Clear on that? Everybody okay with that? So what is the AP port then? This port over here. The AP port over here is port number 16. What should the AP port be then? What should be an access port or a trunk port? What is it communicating to? Isam. It's only communicating to whom? It's only communicating to the WLC. So if you're only communicating to the WLC, it can be an access port. The only time that you want to make it into a trunk port is if the AP wants direct connections to your other VLANs. Even with multiple SSIDs, all multiple SSIDs will still, at the outside, will still have a source IP of the AP, destination IP of the WLC. Inside the header, it'll say this packet belongs to this SSID, that packet belongs to that SSID. Once the WLC gets it, it strips that information off and puts the appropriate VLAN tag on it. That's the job of the WLC. So the AP will be part of a single VLAN, which is VLAN, in our case, 123. The only time the AP needs to be a trunk is if it, remember that flex connect that I told you about, that the AP communicates directly to the switch environment? In that case, I'm not using the WLC to forward the traffic. I'm going direct. That's where I need to trunk. But if you're not going flex connect, which for our purposes, we're not doing that, you can do it based on an access port. All APs will belong to the same VLAN? Not necessarily. It's a recommended thing. You want to make sure, not make sure, it's better that you put the APs in the same VLANs as the WLC, which makes it faster to communicate. You don't have a layer 3 boundary that you need to cross over. You understand that? It's not AP to AP communication more so, it's AP to WLC communication that you worry about, Omar. And that, to keep it as a best practice type of thing, try to keep it in the same VLAN so that you don't need to worry about going through a router. The wired port of the AP. You get my point? So technically, if I wanted, I could have an AP where? Let's put an AP over here. Is that possible? Absolutely. He has an IP now from what range? 10.x, right? Can it communicate to the WLC? Yes, it can. It'll send the packet to its default gateway, which is going to be R1. R1 will forward the packet to the WLC. It's okay. But now this AP needs to go through a layer 3 boundary to get to the WLC, whereas this AP is direct. You get my point? So it's more of a best practice, whether you can do it or not. You can put the AP anywhere as long as it has reachability. Makes sense? AP strips the outer header, right? What does the outer header contain? Source IP of AP, destination IP of WLC, correct? What's inside the inside header? Source MAC, destination MAC. Source MAC of what? Wireless PC. Destination MAC wherever it wants to go. Let's say to the server over here. Okay. When it strips it, the wireless PC's MAC address is exposed over here. When he sends a packet out, he doesn't strip this portion off. He still has that. He just puts a VLAN tag on it. 20. So on the switch, the MAC address, this source MAC address, let's say MAC A, would have been learned off this trunk port. So when this guy responds, he sends a return packet. He's going to say the source is what? Server MAC. Destination MAC now is going to be what? This MAC A. Sends it to the switch. What does the switch say? Switch says that this MAC address is learned on what port? On the WLC port. So sends it to the WLC. Once the WLC gets it, WLC keeps a track of the MAC address associated with what AP. So this MAC A was associated with this AP. It says, okay, I need to encapsulate the packet now. Send the packet, creates a new packet, which will have what now? The return packet will have a source of WLC to what? AP. Inside that packet will be this. So once the AP gets it, AP strips this header off, and AP sees what packet? And he would know where to send it to. On the, he'll just forward it on that radio frequency. Got it? Are the WLC and AP two different type of devices? In terms of Cisco, they keep it as two different devices. WLC is its own device, and the AP is a separate device, two physical devices. Although the WLC, because it's not a wireless device, it is what? It is a wired device. You can have a virtual WLC as well. So this doesn't have to be a physical device. In my case, I have a physical device, but I could have virtualized it. This could technically be a virtual device. The AP is a separate device that has to be a physical device. Good? Now, this is the inner workings of it. How does it work internally? You're probably not going to do that, but I want you guys to understand how the flow is, which is where a lot of people get confused in terms of why are they doing certain things. Now that you understand that, what's the first thing that I would do over here? I would go to the switch. So base network. Configure the switch such that the port connecting the switch to the WLC is a trunk port. Configure the AP port as an access port. That is correct, between the WLC and the AP. CAP is a protocol that is used by WLC and AP to communicate to each other and send this traffic between each other. That's your base config. Now, my question to you guys is, how does the AP get registered to the WLC? This is where they made it so simple for you guys. The AP itself AP is a zero touch or zero configuration device. It is set to get an IP address automatically from a DHCP server. So as soon as you plug the AP into the switch, the AP is a zero-touch device. It will start doing what? Sending out a DHCP discover packet, asking for what? An IP address. It's coming from the factory. You plugged it in. You connect it up to the network. It will ask for an IP address. So you will need to have what? On this network, for this particular VLAN, you would need to have what? A DHCP pool configured. All right. So what VLAN do I need to create the pool for? What IP subnet? For the AP. I'm talking about specifically for the AP. VLAN 123, right? So over here, I'll go in and configure R1, let's say, as my DHCP server. You could do it on a normal DHCP server as well. What do I specify on the R1? I'll say I want to create a pool for the 192, 168, 123 network. Just like I had shown you when we were doing the DHCP configuration earlier on. Remember one of the RNS labs that we did? I will exclude the first set of addresses so that they don't get assigned. Let's say I'm going to assign the addresses from 123 dot, let's say 100 I'm going to reserve. So this is reserved. So the first IP address assigned over there is 101. All right. So I'm going to reserve it. This is my pool. Who's my default gateway? For devices on 123. What do you think the default gateway is going to be? Router 1. So I'm going to put the default gateway for the pool to be 1. So right now, as soon as the AP comes up, he goes to the to the DHCP server. The DHCP server assigns him an IP address of 123.101, for example, because 1 to 100 is taken up. Whatever is available, it's a dynamic IP. He gets an IP. Now, I told you it's a what type of device? There's a zero configuration device. Once it finds the IP, it needs to now send or find out or discover it's what? WLC. How does it do that? That's where on the WLC, when you give it the IP configuration, you give it its IP address, the AP's IP address, you give it the subnet mask, normal stuff, you give it the default gateway, then you use a special option to also give it the IP address of your WLC. That option is option 43. Option 43 is a special option that points towards the WLC. All right. So option 43 is going to say the IP address of your WLC is, and you need to configure that. What should the WLC IP? What is the WLC IP over here? Dot 50. So in your option 43, you're going to say the IP address of the WLC is 50. Option is like another characteristic that you're assigning as part of your IP configuration. Just like you would give out the default gateway DNS server, similarly, option 43 is for the WLC address. So now the AP has its own IP, which let's say based on it being the first device coming up will be 101/24. Default gateway is going to be 123.1, which is router 1, and it'll have the WLC address through option 43 as 192.168.123.50. As soon as it finds that out, it will go and tell him, hey, listen, my name is AP. I'm a client of yours. I'm a client. Please give me all the SSIDs, all the configurations that you have. All the configuration is actually done where? All the SSIDs and the VLAN maps, all done where? On the WLC. So as soon as the AP registers, the WLC pushes that configuration down to the AP. So all the SSIDs that have been created on the WLC will be pushed down to the AP. A new AP comes up. What do you do with that AP? You have to get a new AP because let's say you're running out of the space, you ran out of space, you extended your office, you put a new AP in there to accommodate the extended distance. You can still use the same configuration. As soon as the AP is plugged in, he will get an IP address, he will get the IP address of the WLC, register, and get all the SSIDs that were there, present there, prior to it being configured. So you don't need to touch the AP anymore. Everything is done on the WLC, the centralized configuration model. So that's what this meant. This is what I meant over here. it is set to get an IP address automatically from the DHCP server. The DHCP server should be configured to give it an IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and the IP address of the WLC. That is correct, which is option 43. I'll show you that. Once the IP config is assigned to the new AP, it will know the IP address of the WLC. It will register itself with the WLC. The WLC will push all the configured SSIDs and the associated VLANs to the AP. So I didn't need to do any configuration on the AP itself. Everything was done on the WLC. Good so far, guys? Everybody okay? You understand what we're doing over here? Any questions at this point? It will override it. It will blow the config off, reset it. It'll take some time for it to reset the entire thing. It'll take a couple of reboots, but eventually it'll come up. So just in case you're taking the AP is taking a bit to come up because it's recycling. Recycling because it had to erase the old config and get the new config pushed down. All right. So what I've done over here so far for you guys, I've set this base network over here, where router 2 has two interfaces, one in VLAN 10. By the way, this is supposed to be VLAN 20. So let me just delete this. All right. Everybody okay with this? So I've done this setup and I've ran EIGRP, the routing protocol, so I have reachability between all the different routers. Let me make a connection to my rack. Can you guys see it? Let me launch my, where the hell did my thingy go? No, AP you need to have a physical one. The WLC you can virtualize. R1. Let's switch one. I needed to do it over here. Switch 1, switch 2, R1, R2, and R3. So if you take a look at, for example, if I go to R1, show IP interface brief. You guys see that? I have two interfaces, 192.168.123.1 and 10.1. This network over here. Good so far, guys? Okay. If I check my routing table, I'm running EIGRP as my routing protocol. You see the 20 and 30 networks. What are the 20 and 30 networks? 1 second, guys. 20 is sales and 30 is the, let's call it marketing. You guys get my point. So my reachability, my routing is based on this. All right. Now, the first thing that I want to show you guys is the WLC and the AP. You guys remember this diagram over here? What port is the WLC connected to? $15. So what should 15 be, Rinton? Should be a trunk based on .1Q. And how about port 16, the WAP port? Should be access VLAN 123. Let's check that. Switch 1, show run interface gig 2/0/15. It's a trunk. 16. It's an access port in VLAN 123. Understood? That is the management VLAN, correct. And it's recommended put it on the same VLAN. If not, you'll have to go through routing. Now, what's the next thing that I need to do before I go ahead and provision my AP? What do I need to do on any device? I need to configure a device as a WLC, so as a DHCP server, to assign the WLC IP. So I'm going to make R1 act as my DHCP server. Or if you want, we can do it on switch 1 because it's also a layer 3 device. Okay, I'll make switch 1 into a DHCP server. What's the DHCP scope going to look like? Help me out with that. For VLAN 123, what's the scope? Range. Let's start from 101 through, let's say, 254. Okay, what else do I need to give over here? Default gateway. Who's the default gateway for this network? For 123. R1, so 123.1. What else do I need to do for VLAN? What do you call it? 123. Because my AP is in that VLAN, what do I need to do? Option 43, which is my WLC, which is going to point to what IP? About 50. So I need to do that on switch 1 for what? For VLAN 123 so that the AP can register. Now, while I am at it, what else do I need to do? I also need to create a DHCP pool for what? Other PCs, because when the actual wireless PC logs in, he'll need to get an IP address assigned by the WLC as well. Sorry, by the DHCP server as well. So he's either going to come into VLAN 10, 20, or 30. So let's create a range for them as well. Range and default gateway, they will not need a option 43 because they don't have a AP in VLAN 10 or 20 or 30. Make sense? So this guy over here, we'll say this is for VLAN 10, 101 through 254, or we can even start this at 21. Why? I don't have as many physical devices over there maybe. The default gateway for VLAN 10 is 10.1. You get my point? You understand what I'm doing over here? So similarly, do V20, VLAN 20. Default gateway, let's say, is 20.2. 20.2 is R2, this interface. And I have VLAN 30 then. VLAN 10 clash, meaning? Why are we creating pools for VLANs? These are people, let's say this client, a wireless client logs in, he logs into the sales SSID, which belongs to VLAN 20. He needs to get an IP address. So when he sends a request, where's the DHCP server? So the other VLANs are for your clients, the actual PC clients. Unless you're planning on assigning IP addresses statically to those devices. All right, so let's do that. In terms of the commands, to do this, configure a device as a DHCP server. In real life, you're not going to do it on a router or a switch. R1F00 is VLAN 10. Yes, that is correct. In real life, you're not going to put a router or a switch as a DHCP server, but from the exam perspective, they're not going to have you configure a DHCP server on a PC. You're going to do it either on a router or a switch. Either way, it's the same config. Whether you do it on a router, whether you do it on a switch, the commands are identical. There's no difference. So I'm going to put the commands for you guys. I'm going to start with exclusions. Excluded address 123.1 through 123.254. Or not 254, sorry, 100. That's my exclusion. My second exclusion is for VLAN 10 or 20 or 30. So for this guy, I'm just going to exclude 10 addresses. I don't need to exclude what? A bunch. How come PC client is receiving IP from the VLAN page? Shouldn't it be different? Meaning, when a PC logs in into VLAN 10, what IP address should he get? He logs into, let's say, finance, and VLAN 10 is finance. So what IP address should he get? So for the PCs, the IP addresses are going to be what? 21, 21, 21 from the appropriate pool, because I've done the exclusions. Now I'm going to create the pools. IP DHCP pool. We'll call it VLAN 23, which is just a name. Network. Default router is the command for it. And on this one, we'll say option 43 IP and the IP address of the WLC. For the other pools, because you don't have any APs, it's just going to be clients logging in. I'm just going to specify my network ID and the default router, the appropriate default router. Twenty 20.2, 30, default gateway is 30.3. So if a PC is put into this VLAN, he's going to get an IP address from what? He's in VLAN 20, he's going to get an IP address from this range. If he's put into this VLAN, he's going to get an IP address from this range. If he's put into this VLAN, he's going to get an IP address from this range. DNS, if I need it, I can put the DNS entry over here as well. I don't have a DNS server, but if I did, I can put the DNS entry over here as well. I'm doing what's required right now. Good. So I'm going to copy this. Go to my router, no, to my switch. We agreed on switch 1. And put the configuration in. Looks good. Now I'm ready to initialize my WLC. Oops. Here's my config. So once this is done, the next thing. At this point, my base network is ready. So if I had to take a look at this over here, I've done this part. I've given you an entire overview of the flow of traffic, configure the switches for the base network, and configure the DHCP server. AP will assign the IP based on SSID. Well, AP won't. AP will forward everything to the WLC. Okay? So let's take a look at that real quick. You're talking about the PC, right, Omar? The NPC, the wireless PC. Or to the AP itself. Which one, Omar? AP itself will assign it from the VLAN 123, but PC behind the AP will assign it based on the VLAN it belongs to, based on the SSID. All right? So AP will get IP from VLAN 123 and the PCs will get IPs based on the VLAN associated with the SSID. What is option 43? I was disconnected for some time. When the AP logs in, it gets an IP address. Option 43 tells the AP where the WLC is. It's the IP address of the WLC. It is the IP address of the WLC. VLAN association to the SSID is done on the WLC, correct? And we'll do that right now. But before we get to that point, the first thing I want to do is I want to initialize the WLC from scratch. Okay, so what I have over here, I'm connected through the console to the WLC. Oh no. 1 second, guys. Guys, a small issue. I need to get the WLC reset. So I need to go to the office and do it. It'll probably take me 20 minutes. If it's okay for you guys, it's also time for our break, but I wanted to do this before the break. So let's take a break right now for 20 minutes. When we come back, I'll have the WLC. I'll initialize the WLC. So in terms of where we at right now, once we come back, as I've done the lecture, the long part of it is done. Is this the one? Nope. Where's that? There you go. Now, once I come back, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this. We'll take a look at this. This doesn't take that long. The main part was the lecture. So let's take about 20 minutes. So it's about 6:55 right now. Let's take it till 7:15. 7:15, we'll come back. We'll initialize the WLC. I'll just go and reset the device and come back. It's at the office at the center. So once we're done with that, we'll take a look at this portion after that. All right? Apologize for that. Sometimes the console gets stuck on it. Any questions in the meantime? All right, then let me just rush and get this done and I'll come back. So the WLC is restarting right now. Let it finish up. So it should be in its base config with nothing on it. It gets stuck. The console sometimes gets stuck on the WLC. That's why I had to restart it. Everybody back, guys. Everybody here? Yeses, please. All right. So when it starts up, it'll go through its normal starting of the services. Once it starts up, it'll ask you, what WLC series am I running? Is that what you're asking? 2500 series the WLC, and the 1200, 1280, I think, is the AP. So once it starts up, it's going to ask you, it goes through what is known as the initial configuration dialog. So over there, I'll ask you a bunch of different questions. I'll point out what the questions are all about. Once it does that, it does another restart. Once it restarts, I can access it from the graphical, so from the web. So initially, you need to go just like you had to go for the for your ESA or your WSA, had to configure it from the CLI, give it an IP address, and the rest of the configuration was done through the web. Same thing over here. It requires a little bit more because it does assign you, because you're going to have that management interface as a trunk. You need to assign like the VLAN ID. You need to enable the radio services, something more. But I'll guide you through each one of those steps. So again, you guys are going to have the video. You can just follow along in the video in terms of what I'm doing. It's pretty basic, but certain things that you need to be aware of, certain things that you need to go through the wizard, which are not being used at all for us, but you still need to go through the wizard. Almost there. Better now? I'm just going to write these things down for you guys. So administrator name was admin, the password. Cisco 123. It prompts you twice. Then it was the lag. Lag is for your port channeling. I said no. Then is the management IP. This is the important part. 192.168.123.50. Then it's going to be the subnet mask, management interface subnet mask, and the default router. The default router is going to be .1. The VLAN identifier. What's the VLAN identifier that I need to use over here? Remember, this is a trunk port. So I need to specify this management IP that I'm assigning is for what VLAN, like a sub interface or a VLAN interface. 123, absolutely. Now, on my WLC over here, I have, this is a 2504 WLC. That means it has 4 ports going in from the 2500 series WLC into the switch. Why do they have 4 ports? You have the ability to specify that incoming, let's say the management is coming in from here, but outgoing, you can assign different VLANs for different interfaces. So I can say on one of the ports, I'm going to use VLAN 10, 20, and 30. So I can have different ports assigned for different VLANs for sending and receiving traffic. I do have the ability to do that. All right. But for management, I want to use this. In my case, I have not connected the other 3 ports. I've disconnected the first port. So I'm going to do in and out of the same port. Because it's a trunk, it doesn't matter. All the VLANs can go across it. But you do have the ability, if you want, you can assign certain ports into certain VLANs or dedicated for a certain VLAN. So if you have a particular VLAN that has a lot more traffic, you do have the capability of doing that. But now over here, I'm just going to say port 1 because that's the only one that I've connected. Management DHCP server address. I'm going to point the DHCP address for 1.1. Now, virtual gateway IP address, think about it being like a router ID. You know how in router OSPF you have a router ID or EIGRP has a router ID? Think about it being like that. So let's say 50.50.50.50. It doesn't matter, put anything in, it doesn't matter. It's just like a router ID. Everybody okay with that? Treat this virtual gateway as a router ID. Let me complete this for you guys. So we did, oh man, I hate this. So management IP, management subnet, management default gateway, then was the management VLAN, management DHCP, whatever your DHCP server is, in my case is that, and then the virtual gateway IP address. Again, as I said, it's nothing more than a router ID for this particular router, so put anything in. Multicast address, we're not doing multicasting over here, but because it's a wizard, it will ask for it, put anything in, it doesn't matter. I generally use 255.225.111, so that's what I'm going to use over here. I'm not using multicast over here to send traffic to different multicast domains, but I need to put it in over here. Mobility, I'm not going to do. Mobility is, remember I told you that if I had multiple APs and a user moved from one AP to the other, one AP can hand over that session to another AP. That capability is called mobility. I'm not going to do mobility over here, but it requires you to put something in, so I put it in. And the SSID for management, I call it management. It's fun. Fine. Configure DHCP bridge mode. Don't worry about it. Say no. This is where you want to turn your AP into like a bridge to connect or extend your range of an AP from one side to the other. That's what a bridge mode is. We're not doing that. We're just have a single AP. So say no to that. Allow static IP addresses to the APs. No, I'm not doing static IPs to the APs. I'm doing dynamic. So no to that. So let me write that down so you guys, when you do it on your own as well, you have all these things at your disposal. So we did that. And came the multicast IP. I did mobility. -rf group. It doesn't matter what you put in, just put something in. Anything not used for us because we're not doing multicasting. Configure DHCP bridging. We're not bridging over here. We're doing a normal AP. So no. Allow static IPs. Again, as we said, we're doing what? Dynamic. So no for that. Configure radius server. Radius is basically going to be our ICE. We are going to do that later on, but for right now, I'm not going to do it. Okay. Will be configured later in the ICE section. All right. So I'll say no to this over here. Now, the next thing is the country code. The country code in my AP has been set to Spain. So I'll put the code for Spain, ES. And then the radio on the APs. What type of wireless network do you want to enable? I'm going to enable all the networks, which is 802.11b, 11a, 11g. And in terms of the frequency it wants to use, I'm going to say do an auto RF so it finds out the available frequency and uses it. So yes for all that. So I'll say configure radius server, no. Done that. Then it was enter the country code. This is for the AP. In my case, my AP is configured as ES for Spain. Enable the 802.11x network. Yes to all. Enable auto RF. Yes. Configure an NTP server. Say no. And then configure time. Date and time manually. Yes. Correct. That is correct. Because the frequency it uses, different countries at different frequencies. So AP needs to be able to run on that particular frequency. That's why the country code is important. So I'll say no. Come on. It's not letting go. Slow down for some reason. Don't do enter, but unfortunately I put yes over there because it had stopped. One second. And okay, it's back. One second, guys. Okay, back. No. Yes, this is what I want to do. Date is 10, 14, 17. Time is 19:46:00. It's yes. Now it's going to restart. So yes, and I would set the time, set the date and time, and save. It will restart. So once it restarts, you go start configuring from the command line. Finally, it is at a point that you can actually do it. Basic configuration we talked about. So this is the CLI initial configuration of the WLC. So this is the part that I just copied for you guys. All right. Once it's done, what are you going to do over here at this point? Browse from the management PC to HTTPS. It is based on HTTPS 192.168.123.50. Username is specified as admin, and the password was Cisco123. So once this is done, you're ready to start configuring it. And that would complete your initial configuration of the WLC. Now you can start configuring the rest of it. Just remember, after the first iteration where you set the IP address of the management interface, it will ask you to reload. And that's exactly what it's doing right now. It is doing the reload is about 90% right now. Once it's done, you still need to wait for it to start all the services. Once it starts services, you're good to go after that. Now I'm okay with the speed as well. Small glitch. Now you need to wait for these services to start up. In the meantime, in terms of my diagram, this is my PC over here. This PC is also on VLAN 23. This is my management PC that I am talking about. This is the port, management Switch 1, port 23 should be in VLAN 123. So this port 23 on switch 1 should be in VLAN 123. So if I go down over here, switch 1, show run interface gig 2/0/23. That's the port in VLAN 123. That's this PC that I'm sitting on, the management PC. So if I go over here, should be able to ping the router, which is up already. All right, I'm going to put it to 50 with the -T. The 50 is the IP address of the WLC. Notice I can ping it right now, but it doesn't mean that I can ping it, I can manage it, because management does require all the services to be up. If I get the prompt over here, that means I'm good to go. Now I can open up a browser. I'm going to open up Chrome, for example, HTTPS 192.168.123.50. The standard message, proceed, login, admin, Cisco 123, and I'm in. Notice this WLC, the FIT 2500 series that I told you about, I've only connected the first port. The other 3 ports could have been connected if I wanted to, but I have not done it over here. So if I want, I could have done this for management, this for VLAN 10, this for VLAN 20, this was VLAN 30. Could have done it. But I just kept one port, it's okay. Now the other thing is, because this is up, the AP should have gotten the IP address from the DHCP server. Not only should have gotten the IP address from the DHCP server, it should try to register to the WLC. You go down over here, once it's successful in doing that, you should have an IP address over here associated with the AP over here. It does take some time because it's going to go through the iterations, and it should get connected over here. So if I go and check our switch 1, which is my DHCP server as well, IP DHCP binding, this IP has been assigned to the device from that pool. This is probably going to be my AP. So once it's gotten that, it would have also gotten the IP address of the WLC, and it's going to try to register itself with the WLC. When it does that, you will see it over here in this screen over here, number of APs. Right now it hasn't done it yet. So you can go ahead and try refreshing it. There you go. As soon as you refresh it, what happens? The AP is registered over here. Make sense, guys? So how did the AP register over there? All it needed to do was get the IP address from where? The DHCP server, along with the subnet mask and the default gateway. It got that. It also got the IP address of the WLC registered over here. So at this point, the AP and the WLC are communicating to each other. So now I'm ready to set up what? My wireless setup, so I can allow the clients to connect in. Everybody okay with it? Do you guys understand how the AP registered over here? You guys there? So you guys are okay with this? So WLC registering to the AP, you guys okay with that so far? Now let's go ahead and configure the SSID and the associated VLAN. To do this, once this part is done, I can stop this. I don't need that. I do need the second one. Now this is where you configure the wireless LAN, WLAN. Okay, how do I do it? Two-step procedure. Configure the VLAN interface, which contains the following important information. VLAN ID, the physical port to be used. You guys remember what I told you over here? But I do have the capability of picking a port for a particular VLAN. Remember, I could have said this is VLAN 10, this is the port for VLAN 10, this is the port for VLAN 20 and 30. So I could share different traffic for different interfaces on different segments. I could do that. So that's what you need. You have the ability to do over here. I don't have that choice. I'm going to just put everything to port 1, but technically I could have done that. So I specified that over here as well. I also assign an IP address to a logical VLAN interface on the WLC for this VLAN. So for every VLAN, it's going to have a SVI type of thing. Why is that required? Why is that there? Now, if you look at this diagram over here, you guys pay attention. This is important to understand. When the PC over here logs in, let's say he gets connected to sales. I have associated sales with VLAN 20. So the PC logs into the WLAN, the wireless LAN for sales. To the AP says this MAC address has joined in. Now, as soon as the PC joins in, he needs to get an IP address. What does a PC do at this point? You need to be interactive over here. I need you guys to be interactive. So the PC does what at this point? As soon as he joins in, he needs to get an IP address. So he sends a DHCP broadcast, right? A request or a broadcast, correct? It goes to the AP. What does the AP do with the broadcast? The broadcast has a source MAC. Destination is what? All Fs. It has a source IP 0000 because it doesn't have an IP. Destination is broadcast. It goes to the AP. AP puts what on top of it? It puts the CAPWAP header, in which he's going to say, I'm going to send this packet from the AP to the WLC with a VLAN tag or what? Does he join into sales? I don't even care about the VLAN tag. I'm going to say he joined the SSID sales. Who does this packet go to? The WLC, correct? Everybody okay with it so far? So the WLC receives it. What does the WLC do with it? He says, oh, somebody from sales has joined in. I read that information, but I'll strip this portion off. So now, technically, what he has to do is he needs to forward the packet based on the VLAN tag that was assigned to sales. What VLAN tag did I say it was assigned to sales? 20. So it's going to send this as a broadcast into 20. Broadcast in 20 goes over here. So this wireless client, which is connecting over here, is actually exiting into the wired network with the VLAN tag of 20. Do you guys understand that? So where does it go? It goes, hits over here. It's a broadcast. What does the router do over here? It's a broadcast. It drops it. Unless you configure what? You guys remember, if you want DHCP request to be forwarded, what do you need to do? IP helper. So you can either do IP helper over here. That's an option. But then the broadcast goes over here, everybody listens to it, and then it goes to the router. Router forwards it to the DHCP server. The DHCP server, in my case, is whom? The IP address of 123. I think the IP address of the switch is 15. I'll verify that. Okay, that's one option. It's there. Or what you have the ability to do is, rather than having this request go into what? VLAN 20 like this as a broadcast, what I can do is I can send this as a WLC, I can act as the DHCP relay agent and send a request from 192.168.20. Give it an IP address, whatever you want to call it. Let's call this IP address over here 99. That would be the virtual IP that I'm assigning remember I said it has an SVI, so I'm assigning the SVI of a .99 address, and I'm going to forward that packet to whom? My DHCP server, which is 192.168.123.15. 15. So he's going to send it. It's still going to have a tag of what? 20, but now it's going to be a unicast from here to here as a DHCP request. So now he does not need to have any helper over here because the helping is done by the WLC. If you don't do that over here, then you need to have the helper address over here. You understand that? So you're making the WLC act as the helper address rather than having the router do the helper address. By doing that, you're avoiding that unnecessary DHCP broadcast in this particular VLAN. Or this VLAN if it was from VLAN 30, or this VLAN if it was from VLAN 10. So I need to find out the IP address of my switch. It is the DHCP server. Its IP is 123.15. So now what I'm going to do over here is configure this IP address to the logical interface, default gateway, normal configuration, and IP address of the DHCP server. This makes the WLC into a DHCP relay agent. So that's the first step that I need to do. And I would need to do it for VLAN 10, 20, and 30. Okay, let's see where to do it. Under controller, one of the options is interfaces. And under the interfaces, you create a new interface and you assign it to the appropriate VLAN. So let me write that down for you guys. Where do I do this from? Controller, interfaces, create new interface. So when you create a new interface, it's going to ask you for different things. Interface name, whatever you want to call it. Let's call this finance. VLAN 10 is my finance. So let's write that down. So the first one, I'll call it, name is, that's just a name. This is the finance VLAN, for example. VLAN we'll say is 10. I'm not done. It's going to ask you for all those configuration things that I told you about. Click on apply. When you click on apply, it opens this up. Port number. Port number, which port do I want to use? What port number are they talking about over here? You guys remember I told you it has port 1, 2, 3, and 4. In my case, I'm just using 1, but I could technically say VLAN 10 is on 2, V30 is on 3, 40 is on 4, so on and so forth. In my case, I'm just going to say 1 because I only have one port connected. The interface IP, this is that virtual IP that I talked about. This is going to be 10. Let's say 99. Subnet mask, default gateway, 10.1. Primary DHCP server. If you specify this, it now becomes your, now I'm making my device into what? A relay agent. That's all you got to do over here. I think I put that in for you already. Did I? Nope, not yet. So now I need to put the port number. I need to put the VLAN tag is already there. Was 10. IP address. The IP address of this WLC virtual interface, I'll say 99. Subnet mask. Gateway. DHCP server. And save. Got? You guys got it? And I need to repeat this for what? Apply actually. Save. It's the same thing. It says if you had an active one, you might lose a client. I don't have an active one, so it's okay. For each VLAN, I need to do that. So once I'm done with what? VLAN 10 over here, I'm going to do the same thing for what? 20. I'll call this sales. I don't have a choice. I'll use the same port. somewhat. This is in 20.99, and this is going to be 20.2 is my default gateway, and my DHCP server is still the same. Back, so I have 10, I have 20, and I'll do the 30, which let's call it marketing. Also the same port, 30.99. 30.3 is my default gateway for that VLAN. It's still 123.15. So my interfaces are done. So I have one interface per VLAN that I need to have. This interface name called finance, mark, or sales is associated with the VLAN ID, VLAN tag, plus some other information that is useful in terms of getting an IP address for my clients. Good so far? Now comes a point that I need to create the SSID and specify that this SSID will be associated with this particular VLAN tag. So that's the next step over here. So at this point, I've done my first step in terms of configuring the WLAN. The next step, I'll just do this 3 more times. So the second one was sales, which was 20, same port, 20.99. This was 20.2. DHCP server is the same. This was marketing, 30. And this is done. Now, second step. Once this is done, I now need to go ahead and configure the WLAN with the where you will link the SSID to the VLAN to the security mechanism. What do I mean by security mechanism? Do you need to use web, basic web, advanced web? What type of login or what do you call it? Security mechanism are you using to log in? So where do I do that from? That's under the WLANs tab. And you will create a new WLAN. WLAN stands for, basically is wireless LAN is what it means. So under WLANs, this is the one that we created. We're not going to use it, but it was created as part of my initial setup. Create new. The WLAN is the whole configuration where I link up my SSID to my VLAN. Profile name, you can call it whatever you want. I'll call it, start with finance. SSID is finance. All right, apply. It puts me into the, what do you call it? WLAN stuff. So over here, I need to give it the stuff that I need to put in. I need to put in a profile name. Actually, start with WLAN name. I called it finance. Profile name was also called finance. And the SSID, I also called it finance. The first thing that I need to do over here is status check to enable. It is not enabled by default. This WLAN is not enabled by default. So the first thing that I need to do is check on this status over here. Good. Next, very important. This is where I link. So my SSID is called what? Finance. I need to link SSID to the appropriate VLAN that I've been talking about the last hour, hour and a half. So that's where I go into the interface over here and pick finance, because finance is linked up to what? The VLAN tag. So now any traffic coming in to SSID finance will be linked up to the finance interface, which has the VLAN tag plus also the relay agent part. Good so far? Now, once this is done, I will go to the security and set my security in terms of what? What type of security do I want to do? I'll do the basic one for right now. I'll do the static web. What is static web? You have a 40-bit or a 104-bit type of key. 40-bit gives you a 5-character key. 104 gives you a 13-character key. So let's just use a 13-character key. Cisco 123. So basically that's your web key that you need to use to log in. Into what? Into finance. Click apply. And I'm done. So now I have a new SSID called finance, which the WLC will push to your AP now. And AP will broadcast it out to everybody. I'm ready now. So if I go to my client now over here, I also have a wireless client, which is somewhere over here. So I'll just draw it up. I'll actually just copy this. So I'll put this over here. It's not connected. This is a you guys get the gist? So he's going to now, I have that device, I'll show you. This device now is going to be connected to what? He's going to see the finance being advertised. So that device over here for me is this remote desktop. So if you go over here on my main PC, there's a remote desktop. There's another PC lying right next to it. I'm going to use this PC to log in. What's the initial setup of the AP is blank. As I said, it's a zero-touch configuration device. It goes to the DHCP server, gets an IP address, gets the IP address of the WLC, logs in. If it had any config, it would be blown away. Zero-touch configuration. Everything is done on the WLC, nothing on the AP. So now if I go over here, look over here, should see finance. See this? I'll connect. It's going to ask me for what? Should ask me for a password. What is that password that I set up? Go 1, 2. Hold on. Come on. Okay. Connect into finance. If it connects up, I should get an IP address from what VLAN? VLAN 10. I'm looking for the wireless adapter. There you go. The wireless adapter for WLC. 10.21, 10.1 is the default gateway. I'm ready to go. You guys understand that? Help me out. Let's create sales now. How do I create sales? Come on. Yeah, write everything down. Check to enable. Go to security. Basic web. Apply. Help me create the other one. So what would I need to create over here? Let's call this sales. We'll link it up to the sales interface that links it up to VLAN 20. The rest we'll keep it the same. Create. Profile is sales. SSID will keep it the sales SSID. Apply. Enable it. Don't forget to enable it. Go to sales as the interface. And that's pretty much it. Security, change it to static web. And this time around, I'll use a smaller password, 5-character password, basic, Cisco, and apply. I have sales up and running as well. To test it, I'm going to go to that wireless PC that's laying on that network. And now if I scroll up or down, you should see sales. Okay. Into sales. Yeah, it's better now. Troubleshoot. What happened? Sales. Now, sometimes what happens is it gives you this error about troubleshoot, this is not right or something. Manage wireless networks. There might be an older sales over here. Delete that older sales. See, I have this. Get rid of it. So that it can start from scratch. I'll just delete this MarkNet. Gives me error. All right. Connect. Password was Cisco. Okay. Once it connects up, it should have an IP address from what VLAN? Sales was part of VLAN 20. Remember that we had associated VLAN 20 over here. The wireless still at 10, so give it some time. Still doing its hourglass type of thing. Everything is fine, so or at least should be fine. You just make sure. Switch 1. I want to make sure connectivity is there. Yeah, I can go to 20. Let me just check the controller. Just want to make sure that everything's fine for sales. Port is 1, that is okay. VLAN is 20, 192.168.20.99, 192.168.20.2, and 20.15. Looks good. try again, check if it's come. No, it's not getting an IP address from the DHCP server. Disable it. Enable. Go to sales. I'm making it okay. .2 should have to, but let me just do this. Is that what I have over here? 20.29, 20.2. It's good to me. Let's disable and re-enable it. The other thing that I want to think checking is my pool. 192.168.20.0. This looks good. It's not making it through for some reason. Let me create another one. Let's see what VLAN 30 gives us. If it gives us the same issue, I'll go back and check it. This is the interfaces. What about 20.2? That's my default gateway. Check mark, enable it, mark, static web, get easy on myself. Node 20.2 is router 2, this interface. So now let's see if Mark has showed up. Connect. There's something wrong with the adapter. Not on the other side because it's not even showing up now. There you go. Is that USB adapter on a PC? Why is Mark not showing up? Oops. Cisco 123. Apply. Enable. Could swear I had enabled it. Now let's check. Mark. Connect. Cisco 123. Okay, it's got connected. That is not normal. That's just adapters. Mark, I'll delete it and recreate it. And in the meantime, I'll just Okay. Now let me check. Still not getting an IP. So let's go to the wireless. Manage wireless sales. Move. Mark. Remove. I'll get rid of these other ones. And now let's check the adapters. You disable it and enable it. Start by finance. Finance is working fine. No, I did not delete the. Come on, man. This is Windows. This is the mic. Change the wireless networks on my. In Windows. The first one is okay. I'll show you the DHCP config one more time, but let me do this first. Let me connect up to. Try to connect up to sales. Leave it with Cisco for sales. No, I can't do that over there. The DHCP config you wanted to see was on switch 1. One 192.168.20. 192.168.20.20. This is right, the pool. What about excluded address? Yeah, I've excluded it from 20.1 through 20.20. The network is 192.168.20.0, which is fine. Default gateway is 192.168.20.2, which is again okay. And this is 192.168.30.0 and 30.3. And reachability is there on this guy. Okay, it cannot reach 20.99 for some reason. Sales. port is 1. Say 19. What is wrong in the second octet? That's very strange. Never had that before 30 dots. Okay. Let me do this real quick. I'll move this DHCP server closer to I'll put the DHCP config on R1. It's not reaching it for some reason, which is strange, but it's trying something. See if it. The other thing I want to show, see. This looks okay. This is R2 switch F01. It is in VLAN 20. That's also there. Mind-boggling. Let me do this real quick. I'll create these two interfaces again, but for that, let me just get rid of the sales and mark. Go to the controller, interfaces, mark, remove, new, VLAN 20, say 5, and 92.168.10.1, apply, and that is good. Sales, enable, sales, security, web, Cisco, apply, looks good. Let's check now. Finance is okay. I need to go to sales. SPI address on WLC or VLAN should be part of the app because otherwise you can create a conflict. But unless the conflict is created, it's okay. Cisco. I don't know, I think it was when you're creating it, sometimes it got stuck or something, or because it's very simple the way you create it. There's not much to it. Still stuck on that for right now. On identifying. Maybe one more try of this. That is really, I think it's something to do with this guy rather than the other side, because the other side seems okay. Should prompt me for a password. Son of a gun. It's not allowing VLAN 20 to pass, so why the hell is that? That's the reason. Everything will work now. My VLANs were not there. Now that you know, it should work now. So this one should be pingable. Give it some time, it'll come up, because once you create the VLANs, it'll take about 30 seconds for it to pop in. Brilliant. Everything will work now. So if I go over here, connect, sales, it should be connected now actually. $20. And now let's do finance. Not finance, marketing, controller, interface. Marketing, the VLANs 10 and 20 were only on switch 2. They were not on switch 1. And my WLC was on switch 1. So I'm just creating the same thing again for marketing, 192.168.30. Let's say 5. .30.3 is the default gateway. I'll point to 10.1, it's closer. Apply. Then go to your WLAN. Same procedure, it's just that the switch was the issue over there. So now it is mark, enable it, assign the mark interface, go to security, security web. That's just to 40-bit. Cisco, apply, should be good to go. Now if I go down over here, I should have that marketing in place soon. There you go. Should come up with the password, which is going to be Cisco. Should be identifying soon. Mark. So now I should have an IP address of 30 assigned to me. So based on whoever logs in into whatever SSID, I am getting the appropriate IP address assigned. The problem that we were facing is a good thing that we faced it. So now you know, just in case if you cannot ping the IP address of the SVI on the WLC, check to see if the switch has all the VLANs. I assume that the VLANs were there because I checked it on switch 2. I didn't check it on switch 1. All right, so as you log in, you get associated with the appropriate VLAN based on that. Now, let me show you another thing. Now, when you're logged in right now, your PC, logically speaking, is over here. This PC, this wireless PC, although you see it over here and it actually initially comes in over here, logically it's over here. So if I do a trace route from here to 192.168.123.15, which is this guy, how many routers does it cross over to get to switch 1? It will cross over because he's technically where? He's technically over here. He will cross over R3 to R1 to get to switch 1. He's not over here. So don't think he's coming in from here to the APWLC and going this way. He is actually coming in from this route. So that verifies the story that I told you about in terms of coming in from the top. All right, so let's check. I go back to my PC. Over here, I can do a trace RT as the command on the PC to 192.168.123.15, which is your, what do you call it? The switch. So it's going to do a trace via R3 to R1, not 2, R3 to R1. 2 hops. Is that what you're saying, Omar? So it should show you a hop of 3 and a hop of 1. So the first hop should be R3. That's 30.3. And then the next hop should be router 1. So that tells you that it's actually coming from the top. It's not, although if you look at the picture, it's coming in from the AP to the WLC. That's physically. Logically, in terms of the IP address, it's coming from the top. So it went to 3, to 1, and then to the switch. It's not tunneling it. It's sending it based on what? When, remember, there's a physical and a logical. So when the packet leaves the WLC, this is your this is your switch. This is your WLC. Because the packet came in from Mark, Mark is associated with VLAN 30. Any packet that came in from this trunk, from the AP, which came in from the PC, it came into the WLC. WLC stripped the cap header, found out it came in from Mark. Mark is associated with VLAN 30. It sends a packet into the switch environment with a VLAN tag of 30. So if it's a VLAN tag of 30, it's going to send a broadcast for the default gateway in 30. So it's not really tunneling it, it's switching it based on VLAN 30. So when the switch receives it receives it with a VLAN tag of 30 that automatically puts him in that logical network. Does that make sense, Omar? Based on the VLAN tag, it knows, the switch knows that, hey, listen, I need to put it into VLAN 30, which is 192.168.30 at the top. The tunneling that happens is the packet going from the AP to the WLC based on the outer header. And again, the problem that I was facing, how is R1 will forward which broadcast? The DHCP broadcast? For R3, it doesn't. See, the packet, that's what I think that the confusion is, the physical and the logical. Is this the physical topology or the logical topology? This is the logical. What's the physical look like? Forget about this wireless PC. Okay? How is this possible? How does a PC become part of this VLAN? Because at the end of the day, everything is connected to what? Switch 1, right? So the PC, how does a PC become part of this network? What does the PC send into the switch? So the switch recognizes that this PC is part of this network. What does the switch recognize? The switch only recognizes the VLAN tag. So this port, when this port, the packet comes into this particular switch, it comes in with a VLAN tag of 30. So if the PC over here, now what does the PC do? Let's say the PC wants to communicate to 192.168.123.1. What does the PC find out over here? His IP address is 192.168.30. Let's say X, and it needs to go to 123.1. The first thing that the PC does, it finds out that these two addresses are on two different networks. So when I want to send the packet out, yes, my source address is going to be 30.x going to 123.1. But because these two are not on the same network, he will send an ARP, figuring out the IP address of what? The default gateway. When he sends a broadcast, it comes into the switch, it has a VLAN tag of what? 30. That means it's only going to populate within VLAN 30. R3 responds back, says my MAC address is whatever the MAC address is. And it puts the packet like this. MAC for PC, going for MAC for R3. So when the switch gets it, it knows the MAC address for R3 is this particular port, forwards it, because you need to understand what you have over here, although you see it as a single line, is a switch. So the PC is connected over here, he'll send it. And it's the same switch over here, same switch over here. The only thing is I've split it up based on VLANs. So when the packet comes in over here, I'll send it over down to him. He gets it, he strips the layer 2 off. He looks at the packet 123, he finds out that the next hop for 123 is router 1. So he changes the MAC address over here. This is without the wireless part. MAC from R1, MAC from R3 to MAC for R1. Sends a packet to him. He gets it. He strips off what? Layer 2. It's still 123.3. Says, oh, it's somebody on here. Sends a broadcast down here. Right? Now let's change that to our wireless PC. The wireless PC on the same switch is not connecting directly. He's connecting where? There's an AP. AP connects up to what? The WLC, which is trunk. But on the trunk, it knows that marketing is associated with VLAN 30. So when this PC comes in, this PC over here, he is still 30.x. He is still going to go to 123.1. So he figures out he needs to send an ARP for his default gateway, which is 30.3. So when he sends the ARP, what does the ARP look like? Who is 192.168? 30.3. He's sending a broadcast for what? 30.3. That broadcast ARP, the entire packet is encapsulated and when sent from WLC AP to the WLC. So at that point, when the packet goes in from that wireless PC, it is encapsulated over here. At that time, the WLC does not expose the VLAN tag. That's just going from AP to WLC. He gets it. He strips this portion off. Now, what the WLC sees that the packet came in from a device that was connecting to SSID, which was associated with MARC, which is VLAN 30. So the WLC then sends a packet back over here to VLAN 30. Don't look at this link. This is the management link. At that time, it sends a packet as a layer 2 packet with a VLAN tag of 30. So where will that go? This is a broadcast in VLAN 30. So it'll only go to ports in VLAN 30. That includes the R3 port. Does that make sense, Omar? So when he's sending the broadcast, is doing a broadcast based on VLAN 30, which on the switch is this port and this port. This port and, sorry, the PC port, the physical PC port. So now he's going to respond back and say, hey, listen, my MAC address is MAC-C. That will come again into the switch because that source MAC was learned via this port. The packet will come back into the WLC. The WLC will again send that packet just like it had done earlier on. It's going to encapsulate it, send it from what? The WLC to AP, telling him the MAC address is MAC R3. So he creates a packet going from MAC for PC, which is the wireless PC, to MAC for R3. Again, that packet goes to whom? The AP. AP sends it to through the trunk to the WLC as AP to WLC. He strips it off. Once he strips it off, he now needs to send it into the switch network because the device came in from MARC, which is associated with VLAN 30. It will put the VLAN tag as 30 and forward the packet to R3. It's all done based on this. So the biggest confusion that you think is that I am actually exiting on this link. When I show you this link over here as WLC being in VLAN 123, that is just the management port. But the WLC, because this is at a layer 2, it's a trunk, which allows a management port, which is VLAN 123, but it also allows all the other VLANs to communicate on this trunk port. But that's a layer 2 aspect of it. Got it? Same thing. When he replies, when let's say this guy is replying back, R3 is replying back to whom? Who's he going to reply back to? Absolutely does. Why does it go there? Because on the switch, from the switch's perspective, when he sends the traffic out, he's sending it from MAC for R3 to MAC for PC, the wireless PC. On the switch, where did I learn that MAC address, wireless MAC address? On the port connecting from the WLC to the switch, this port, because in your MAC address table, you'll see that wireless MAC address first enters in over here. So on this particular port. So when the R3 device will respond back, it's going to send it back to this port. Why? Because this MAC address on the switch was learned on that WLC port. Once the WLC gets it, the WLC keeps track of this MAC for PC is associated with a particular AP. You can see that on the client table. Let me just show you that as well. On the WLC part itself, if you go to clients, see this MAC address associated with 30.3 is associated with this particular AP. So when it receives the MAC address coming in from the switch based on this MAC address, it knows that it needs to send it to this particular AP. Again, at that point, what does he do? He takes up whatever frame that R3 is sending to the wireless PC MAC. He will encapsulate it from the WLC management IP to the IP associated with this guy. And I'll show you where that IP is, whatever that IP is for the AP. So again, it tunnels it. From where to where? From the WLC to the AP. AP gets it. Now he forwards the traffic based on the radio frequency. So the API IP address, you also know that if you go over here under your access points, you can go to summary and check all access points. And the IP address is 123.113. Inside frame is always intact, yeah. It's just the outer header they play around with. Either a VLAN on it or a IP address of AP to WLC or vice versa. Good, Omar? All right. The next thing, the drawback over here. Thank you. The drawback over here is, let's say I had 50 VLANs or 15 VLANs in my network. What did I do over here right now? For every VLAN, I associated the VLAN, I had to create a appropriate what? SSID with it, right? So if I have multiple VLANs, so on, how many SSIDs would I create? Multiples, right? So when you go to browse, you'll see a whole list of SSIDs. That's where ICE comes in. ICE is a radius server from Cisco. What you do is, first thing that you do is you set up a relationship between ICE for radius, so they can use each other for authentication. On the WLC, you create a single SSID. Broadcast it, but you specify it with 802.1x, which is a layer 2 authentication mechanism. So rather than asking for a password, it will ask for a username and password. On the client, it's going to ask for a username and password. The user types in his own username and password. That goes to the AP. AP sends it to the WLC. The WLC will ask whom? ICE. Listen, do you know this username, let's say called sales1? He'll say, yes, I know sales1. Sales1 is a member of a group called sales. And this group sales is associated with VLAN 20. What you have is over here, you still have VLAN interfaces. Remember the SVIs that I had created? You still have them. So once his response comes back into the WLC that, hey, this guy, sales1 is associated with the group called sales, which is a member of VLAN 20. The WLC, although it has one SSID, let's say ABC, you'll say, oh, this ABC, although initially was based on the management interface, but now because the ICE is telling me that this particular guy logging in is a member of 20, I will assign him to the interface. It automatically overrides the normal interface and puts what? VLAN 20 over here. So what you have essentially is on the WLC, you have one SSID, multiple VLAN interfaces ready. User logs in into ABC, the AP. AP sends it to what? WLC. It says, oh, WLC, ABC is associated with, can be associated with multiple VLANs, but I don't know which this guy is with. So the WLC sends a request to whom? ICE. And what does ICE do? ICE keeps a track of what? The group and the appropriate VLAN. Finance, sales, and what was the other one? Marketing. One second, guys. All right. So that's what the ICE does. So rather than having what? Multiple SSIDs, I'm going to have a single SSID. So how do I do that? The first thing that I need to do, and that's where this ICE comes in. I have ICE over here at 192.168.123.35. That's my ICE. I need to set up a relationship between ICE and radius. Okay? Absolutely, for multiple VLANs. VLANs are associated with multiple subnets. So I have that SSI, the VLAN interface is created. So how do I set this up? Let's take a look. First thing I need to do is set up a relationship between ICE and WLC. So coming back over here, we did this. This was all good. Eventually, ICE and WLC. Step one, set up the relationship between ICE and WLC. Both sides. You need to do it on WLC. Let's take a look at where. If I go to the WLC, one of the options is security. ICE is a radius server. So you go under radius, authentication, create a new one. IP address is 192.168.123.35. We'll put a password of Cisco 123. Cisco 123. Just do it twice and apply. It's created over here, 192.168.123.35. And then do the same thing for accounting, because radius can be used for authentication as well as accounting. 123.35. The password is Cisco 123. Good. Clear? Now, how do I access ICE? I'll open up a tab. It's on the same VLAN. HTTPS 192.168.123.35. Log in, and you'll do a lot more work with ICE tomorrow as well. Username is admin, and the password I've created as CCIE at 123, I think. Yep, that's still there. Accept. This is the ICE interface. The first thing that I will do, I'll go to my work center, because work center, they give you everything in one shot. The first thing that I need to do over here is I need to set up my device. All right. To set up my device, I need to go to network access. Oops. Network resources. Okay. Click on it. And you'll notice there's network devices over there. These are my clients. 2.2. Click on add. I'm going to point towards what? The WLC. Name doesn't matter. What matters is the IP address, which is going to be 123.50. Model and those type of things, I really don't care about it. The main thing that is important over here is the IP address that I specified at the top and the radius settings. What's the password that I set up? Cisco 123. You can show it so that you typed it in correctly, and you submit. So at this point, the WLC is pointed to ICE, ICE is pointed to WLC. Okay, so what do I need to do over here for setting up that a particular user and a group will be associated with a particular VLAN? So first thing that I'll do is set up a group. I'll set up 3 groups over here. So this is done. This was done on the WLC, and I'll just say on ICE. Solution and AVI. Second step, on ICE. Configure the groups and users. So I want to create a sales group and create a user called sales1 with a password of Cisco123. I want to create Mark as a group, Mark1 with a password of Cisco123. And I want to create finance as a group with Fin1, password of Cisco123. That's what I want to do. All right. Once I do that, I'll associate these with what? With my appropriate VLANs. I'll show you how. The first thing I need to do over here, I go to work centers. And if you take a look at it, there's different ways to get to it. Basically, what you want to go is create identity groups. You could also do it under policies, different ways of doing it under under administration. One of the options is identity management and groups. User identity groups, there's certain default created ones. See, under security, you'll see that in the video, security, authentication, and accounting. So over here, I'll click on add, create sales. At this point, I'm just creating the groups. Add, finance, add, Mark. So 3 groups. Finance, Mark, and sales are created. Once the groups are created, create the identities. Those are your users. Again, under administration, groups, and then identities. Add the user. The first user I want to create is called sales1. Password we set was Cisco123. Cisco123. I don't need to do an enable password right now. And the group he belongs to is sales. Normal network administration stuff. I created a user called sales1, made it a member of the group called sales. Add another one. Mark1, Cisco123, Cisco123. So Mark is created. And the third one that I need to create is Fin1, Cisco123, Cisco123, and this one again, put them into finance. So what did I do over here? Created the users and put them into the appropriate groups. All right. I'm going to have multiple users inside the group. You can also integrate ICE with the Active Directory, so you can also pull the users from Active Directory. Now, for authentication, if you click on policy and authentication over here, you automatically, by default, have the ability to do what I'm going to be doing is wireless 802.1x authentication. So that capability is built into ICE. I don't need to do anything special about it. So .1x wireless capability is built in. I don't need to do anything special about it. What I do need to do is map over what? Map over that group to the appropriate VLAN. Where do I do that? Under policy, policy elements, results. So the first thing that I would do after creating the groups, assign or create an authorization profile that assigns users to groups. Now, groups to VLANs. All right. At this point, I'm not going to even do any groups. I'm just going to assign VLANs. So assign groups to VLANs. That's okay. But right now, I'm just going to specify the VLAN. This is done under policy, policy elements and results. This is called an authorization profile. So under policy, policy elements, results, when you go over there, this is the screen that you'll get. Go to authorization and authorization profiles. Click on it. There's some pre-created ones. I'm going to create my own. Add. Give it a name. What do you want to give it? Let's call it the sales profile. The only thing that I'm doing in the sales profile is assigning what? The VLAN. Sales was part of what VLAN? 20. Now at this point, I have not specified the sales group. This is just a name so that I know that whenever I use sales profile, it is associated with what VLAN? VLAN 20. So similarly, I'll create another profile. What is the profile going to be called? I'm going to call it Mark profile. And Mark profile, I'm going to put or associated with VLAN 30. And a third one, finance profile. And I'm going to associate that with VLAN 10. So at this point, I should have what? 3 user created profiles that I created: finance, Mark, and sales. Where's Mark? Finance, Mark, and sales. But at this time, I still haven't specified that this group called sales should be associated with what? Any of these profiles. All right? To do that, I will go to, again, policy, authorization. In that policy authorization, I'm going to create a new policy. The way you would do it, I'll just put it at the top. I'll click on the top one and say insert above. And I'll call it, let's say, sales wireless. All right? What group? I'm going to say if the user comes in, which is a member of what group? As the name suggests, sales, which is sales 1. And he's connecting in using, I can specify whether wired or wireless, because based on each one, I can have a different condition. So I can say if he's connected in, he's authenticated based on what? Wireless.1x. Given the profile that I created, what profile did I create? Where did it go? Sales profile. Now take a look at the way it pans out. It says if a user called sales, a member of the group called sales logs in, he's authenticated based on what? Wireless 802.1x, given the sales profile. What is inside the sales profile? The only thing I put in the sales profile is that VLAN 20. Similarly, I'll copy this or duplicate it, because a lot of the stuff is the same. I'll call this Mark Wireless. Change the group to what? Mark. It is still wireless 802.1x, but the group for Mark is Mark. Like an ACL, yes. So basically what I'm saying is if this user logs in, using wireless, give him this profile, which gives him VLAN 20, he gets VLAN 30. I'll do another one. Let's call it Fin Wireless. Group is finance. Condition is still the same one, the .1x. .1x for wireless. And the profile that I want to give him for this guy is going to be finance. Done. My ICE part is done for assigning what? At this time, I'm going to assign the VLAN down to WLC. Now, what do I do on the WLC? The first thing that I'm going to do is on my VLANs, the WLANs, I'm going to get rid of all of them. Except for the management, I'm going to get rid of finance, sales, and mark. Done? Now I'm going to create a new one. Let's call it ABC Corp. Apply. The interface is the management interface because I'm going to communicate to my ICE using the management interface. Enable. Although I have the other ones, I'm not going to use them. I'm going to let ICE send me what? The VLAN, and then I'm going to switch over my interface dynamically to where? To the appropriate interface, whether it's sales, marketing, or finance. In terms of security, it's this one, WPA, WPA2. This is 802.1x by default. So I don't need to change anything under security, but I do need to do some special things. Number one, I need to tell this ABC Corp WLAN that your AAA server, remember the one that I had defined? It's right over here. Use it now. I had created it under security. I'm using it right now. Radius server override interface. What does this mean? What this basically means, when he sends me a VLAN tag of 10, 20, or 30, I'm going to switch my VLAN interface to whatever VLAN has been assigned to me by my ICE. That's called the override interface. Who's going to tell you that? It's going to be told to you by this server. But the thing is, by default, your WLC uses local authentication first. So it's going to check the local users first. I'm going to change that and put Radius as my top priority. So I'm going to check the Radius server for the usernames first. So when a user logs in, he's going to be pointed towards the Radius server. So under security, AAA, Radius server override interface, set the servers, and then specify Radius as your top priority in terms of authentication. I'm not done though. Go to advanced. Although I specified allow the override, you need to, under advanced, globally enable it as well. So that's under the AAA server, but you also need to globally specify that you need to enable it. Once that's done, under NAC, you need to specify I'm going to get it from Radius. Radius server in this case is ICE, yes. As you saw, we use Radius as our protocol to communicate between WLC and ICE. So on this advanced tab, enable it, and Radius NAC because I'm changing my state based on Radius. Apply it and I'm done. So once I apply it, now if I go to my client over here, I'm not going to see multiple what? SSIDs. What am I seeing right now? I should see ABC Corp, right? But before I go in there, what I need to do is create a profile so that my profile is ready for it. Create a profile. What was the name? Manually created. ABC Corp. All right. ABC Corp. You want to specify WPA2 Enterprise, which is your 802.1x. So create ABC Corp. Specify WPA2 Enterprise, which is 802.1x. Encryption, leave it at AES. Next. I'm not done. Change connection. Go to security. WPA2 AES is specified. Microsoft Pete. That's a protocol that is used to do the authentication. That's fine. Go to settings. Uncheck this validate server certificate because I don't have Come on. I don't have the certificate for the WLC. So that's what this is saying is don't validate the server certificate. Don't validate the server. Otherwise, it's going to make sure you need to have the server certificate trusted by one of these servers. I don't want to do that. The other thing is under secure password, uncheck this automatically use my Windows logon name. In real life, this might be a good thing, but over here, I don't have Active Directory. I'm not going to do that. And also, I would undo this enable fast reconnect, which is a good thing again in real life. Here, it's not good because I want to switch from one user to the other. Done? Once this is done, you can also, don't remember it because I want to use different usernames. Go to advanced settings and specify your user. So you can specify your user credentials over here. For example, I'm going to use sales1, Cisco123. Click OK. OK. My profile is now. Now I can go in over here, ABC Corp. It's connecting. Should prompt. Actually, it shouldn't even prompt. It's going to take that username that was specified. If everything is okay, it should log you in. And if it logs you in, what VLAN would you be put into? Sales was a member of what? 20. So ABC Corp looks like it's connected. See that? Now, let's say I want to change that. I don't want to log in as, what do you call it? Sales, I want to log in as marketing. I'm going to go to the properties of that wireless connectivity that I created, change it, replace the credentials to, let's say, Mark. Click OK. Now, because I changed it, it's going to do what? Prompt you to reconnect because the credentials changed, right? It's going to go through the same thing again. Identifying, it's logged in. I logged in as Mark, right? What VLAN? 30. So the same SSID, but different user, I'm getting into a different VLAN. Let's try the third and last one. Manage wireless. Properties. Security. Sorry, wrong place. Advanced settings. Replace credentials. I'm going to say FIN1. All right, let's check. This should be in VLAN. And let's see if it's connected. 3. So by doing ICE, what's the advantage that I gained? Same SSID, ABC Corp, I'm logging into what? Different VLANs based on my username password. The only thing that changes is when the user logs in, the authentication that is taking place just for the initial username password is getting sent between what? Here. Other than that, the traffic is not going through ICE. It's just going the same exact traffic flow that we have discussed whole evening. The only thing is the initial username password validation where the VLAN is tagged on is done through ICE. That's it. The actual data flow is still the same way through the WLC. Absolutely. The only difference is I had to create the usernames and passwords where, Zahid? On ICE. Whereas in your case, AD already has it. So I don't create it on ICE. I point ICE to AD. So I'll pull the users and the groups from where? From Active Directory. Same concept though. I don't have Active Directory on the rack. Otherwise, it's not that big of a deal. You just link it up. As soon as you link it up, you can log in from, what do you call it? You can download all the groups over there. Yes, you can. If you go over here, oops. Remember where I showed you the client? We'll do a little bit more of that tomorrow in terms of wireless and ICE, the WLC and ICE. We need to do it again a little bit tomorrow because of this part. We still need to configure ICE with the WLC tomorrow. So I'm going to redo this again. But I want you guys to at least have that once in your configuration. So if you take a look at it, we did this, we did that, initialization of the WLC, VLAN interfaces, and your WLANs, and then we did take a look at this and this. Configuring the relationship between WLC and ICE, and configuring .1x authentication with VLAN assignment. So tomorrow, wired ICE, SXP, and device administration. So what I'm going to do right now, I need to log off because my other class is already 10 minutes late. So if you guys don't mind, any questions, I'll try to answer them first thing tomorrow, same time. Okie doke. See you guys tomorrow, same time. Take care. Good night.